Zareth stood before the Crystal Council, her large frame casting shadows across the gleaming floor. The elders sat in their perfect rows, their bodies shimmering like living diamonds. Each one was exactly the right size, exactly the right shape. She was not. "You know why you are here," Elder Vexena spoke, her voice cold as winter wind. "Your body has grown beyond acceptable limits. You cannot fulfill your purpose." Zareth's heart sank deeper with each word. She had known this day would come. For months, she had watched her reflection change, her body expanding past the sacred measurements that every Veltari learned as children. The numbers that decided who could have families and who could not. "I am still Veltari," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the vast chamber. "I was born here. This is my home." Elder Kethra laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Home is earned through purpose. Those who cannot reproduce have no place among us. It is the way it has always been." The trial was short. There were no witnesses to speak for her, no family to stand by her side. Her own relatives had turned away months ago when her condition became obvious. The measurement scanners confirmed what everyone already knew. Her body was 43% larger than the maximum acceptable size for reproduction. "By the ancient laws of our people," Elder Vexena announced, "you are hereby banished from Velter Prime. You have 3 days to leave our world. You may never return." The words hit her like physical blows. Banished, cast out, alone. 3 days later, Zareth stood at the spaceport with nothing but a small bag of belongings and a one-way ticket to Heaven's Rest, a trading station on the edge of known space. The transport ship was old and crowded, filled with other outcasts and wanderers. She found a seat in the back corner and tried to make herself as small as possible. The journey took 2 weeks. During that time, she barely spoke to anyone. What was there to say? That she was a failure? That her own people had thrown her away like broken crystal? She watched the stars pass by the tiny window and wondered if this was how her life would end, alone among strangers, forgotten by her own kind. Heaven's Rest was nothing like the beautiful crystal cities of her homeworld. It was a massive metal structure floating in space, dirty and crowded and loud. Thousands of different species lived here, all mixed together in a chaos that would have horrified the orderly Veltari. But for Zareth, it was simply the only place she could go. She found a tiny room in the lower levels of the station, a space so small she could barely stand upright. The rent took most of her remaining credits. She would need to find work soon. But what could she do? On Velter Prime, she had been studying to become a crystal gardener, tending the living mineral forests that covered their world. Here, there were no crystal gardens. There was only survival. Her first job was cleaning the docking bays where ships came and went. The work was hard and dirty, nothing like the delicate art of crystal cultivation. Her supervisor, a gruff alien with 6 arms, paid her barely enough to afford her room and 1 meal a day. But it was work, and work meant she could stay alive. The hardest part was not the physical labor. It was the loneliness in the crowded corridors of Heaven's Rest. She was more alone than she had ever been. Different species passed by her every day, some friendly, some hostile, most simply indifferent. None of them understood what she had lost. Sometimes, other Veltari would visit the station. Traders, diplomats, tourists seeing the galaxy. When they saw her, their reactions were always the same. First confusion, then recognition, then disgust. They would turn away quickly, their crystalline forms trembling with revulsion. Some would whisper to their companions, pointing at her with barely concealed horror. "Look at that one," she heard a young Veltari merchant say to his friend. "How did someone like that even get here? They should have been dealt with years ago." Each encounter was like a knife to her heart. These were her people, her kind, and they looked at her as if she were something unclean. She began taking longer routes through the station to avoid the areas where Veltari were likely to be found. The months passed slowly. Zareth learned the rhythms of the station, the best places to find cheap food, the quietest corners where she could sit and remember better times. She watched the other inhabitants of Heaven's Rest and marveled at their diversity. There were tall ones and short ones, wide ones and thin ones, creatures with scales and fur and skin of every color imaginable. Among them were the humans, a species she had heard about but never met. They were strange beings, not particularly large or strong or beautiful by most standards, but they seemed to accept everyone around them without question. She watched them work alongside creatures 10 times their size, laugh with beings who looked nothing like them, show kindness to species that others found frightening. Still, she kept her distance. Even these supposedly tolerant humans would surely reject her if they knew her story. Who would want to associate with someone so flawed? That her own people had cast her out, she had learned to expect nothing but rejection and shame. One day, while she was working in the docking bay, a human ship arrived. She watched from the shadows as the crew unloaded their cargo, noting how they moved with easy confidence, how they joked with each other as they worked. Their leader was a woman with kind eyes and gentle hands, supervising the work with quiet authority. The woman noticed her watching and smiled, not the cold, calculating smile of the Crystal Council, but something warm and genuine. For a moment, Zareth felt something she had not experienced in months' hope, but then reality crashed back down. Hope was a luxury she could not afford. She was broken, unwanted, cast out. No amount of human kindness could change that fundamental truth. She turned away from the woman's smile and went back to her work, scrubbing the metal floors until they gleamed. Night came to Haven's Rest, marked not by the setting of a sun, but by the dimming of the artificial lights. Zareth returned to her tiny room, ate her meager meal, and stared out the small porthole at the stars. Somewhere out there was Velter. Prime, the world that had been her home. She wondered if anyone there ever thought of her, if anyone missed her at all. Probably not. She had been erased from their perfect society as if she had never existed. Her name would be forgotten, her story untold. She was nothing now but a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happened to those who did not fit the mold. Tomorrow would bring another day of work, another day of survival. She would clean the docking bays, avoid the stares of her own people, and continue existing in the spaces between worlds. It was not a life, but it was all she had left. As she prepared for sleep, Zareth caught sight of her reflection in the metal wall. Her large form filled the small space, a constant reminder of her failure. She closed her eyes and tried to remember what it felt like to be whole, to belong somewhere, to have a future that stretched beyond mere survival. But those memories were fading now, like crystal gardens in the dark. All she had left was the present moment and the faint hope that tomorrow might be just a little bit easier than today. Dr. Maya Chen had always been curious about the strange and wonderful. As a xenobiologist working on Haven's Rest, she spent her days studying how different species across the galaxy brought new life into the world. Each species had their own unique way of creating families, and Maya found endless fascination in these differences. The trading station was perfect for her research. Species from across the galaxy passed through daily, offering her chances to observe and learn. She had documented reproduction methods for over 200 different alien races. But there was always something new to discover. One morning, while reviewing her notes in the station's central hub, Maya overheard a conversation between two Veltari merchants. Their crystalline bodies sparkled under the artificial lights as they spoke in hushed, disgusted tones. "Did you see that abomination in the lower levels?" one said, his voice dripping with contempt. "How did something like that even survive this long? The elders should have dealt with it years ago," the other replied. "It's a disgrace to our entire species." Maya's scientific curiosity was immediately sparked. She had studied the Veltari extensively and knew them to be a proud but rigid society. What could possibly disgust them so much? She had never seen them react with such strong emotion before. Over the next few days, Maya paid closer attention to the Veltari who visited the station. She noticed a pattern. Whenever they ventured into the lower levels, they would return with expressions of revulsion and shame. They would whisper among themselves, shake their crystalline heads, and quickly leave those areas. Maya's research instincts kicked in. Something was happening in the lower levels that the Veltari found deeply disturbing. As a scientist, She had to investigate. She gathered her equipment and headed down to the areas where the station's poorest residents lived and worked. The lower levels were darker, more crowded, and filled with the sounds of hundreds of different species going about their daily lives. Maya moved through the corridors, observing everything around her. She saw creatures of all shapes and sizes working together, sharing meals, creating small communities in the forgotten corners of the station. Then she saw her. In the docking bay, scrubbing the metal floors with careful precision, was a Veltari. Unlike any Maya had ever seen, she was magnificent in her size, her crystalline form catching the light in ways that made her seem almost luminous. But there was something else Maya noticed immediately: the way she moved, the way she held herself. This was someone carrying deep pain. Maya watched from a distance, taking notes on her tablet. The Veltari worked alone, keeping to the shadows, avoiding contact with others. When a group of Veltari merchants passed through the docking bay, Maya saw something that made her heart ache. The working Veltari saw them coming and quickly moved to hide behind a pile of cargo containers. But they had seen her too. The merchants stopped, their faces twisting with disgust. They pointed at her hiding spot and spoke in rapid, harsh tones. Maya didn't understand their language, but she recognized the tone. It was the same way some humans spoke about things they found shameful or wrong. After the merchants left, the Veltari woman slowly emerged from her hiding place. Maya saw tears glistening on her crystalline cheeks. In that moment, Maya understood something profound was happening here. This wasn't just about different appearances, this was about rejection, about someone being cast out from their own people. Maya's human instincts kicked in. She had grown up in a culture that celebrated differences, that found beauty in diversity. The idea that someone could be rejected simply for how they looked was foreign and deeply upsetting to her. She wanted to help, but she knew she needed to be careful. Trust would have to be earned slowly. The next day, Maya returned to the docking bay with a different purpose. She brought her lunch with her and sat on a nearby crate, pretending to review her research while actually observing the Veltari woman. When their eyes met, Maya offered a gentle smile, the same kind she would give to any colleague or friend. The Veltari woman looked shocked. She glanced around quickly, as if checking to make sure Maya was really looking at her and not someone else. When she realized the human was indeed smiling at her, she quickly looked away, but Maya caught a glimpse of confusion and wonder in her eyes. Over the following weeks, Maya made it a habit to eat her lunch in the docking bay. She would nod politely to the Veltari woman, sometimes saying a quiet hello or have a good day. The woman never responded, but Maya noticed she stopped hiding. When Maya was around, Maya began bringing extra food, simple things like fruit and bread that most species could digest. She would leave them on the crate where she sat, and after she left, the food would disappear. It was a small gesture, but Maya hoped it conveyed what words could not, that she cared about the woman's well-being. One day, Maya decided to take a bigger step. She approached the Veltari woman directly, her movements slow and non-threatening. The woman looked up from her work, fear and confusion clear in her expression. "I'm Maya," the human said simply. "I'm a scientist here on the station. I study how different species create families." The Veltari woman stared at her for a long moment. Maya could see the internal struggle, the desire to connect warring with the fear of rejection that had been beaten into her. "I'm Zareth," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. It was the first time Maya had heard her speak, and she was struck by the musical quality of the Veltari language. "It's nice to meet you, Zareth. Would you like to join me for lunch sometime?" Zareth's eyes widened with shock. You want to eat with me?" "Of course," Maya said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I eat alone most days. Company would be nice." The next day, Zareth shyly approached Maya's usual spot during lunch break. Maya had brought enough food for both of them, and they sat together in comfortable silence at first. Maya spoke gently about her work, about the different species she had studied, about how fascinating she found the diversity of life in the galaxy. "Every species has something unique to offer," Maya said, watching Zareth carefully. Every individual, too. The galaxy would be a much smaller, sadder place if we were all the same. Zareth looked at her with something Maya hadn't seen before: hope. As the days passed, their lunch meetings became regular. Maya learned about Veltari culture, about their beautiful crystal cities and living mineral forests. She heard about Zareth's dreams of becoming a crystal gardener, about the family she had lost, about the trial that had ended her old life. But Maya also began to notice things that didn't add up. The Veltari were supposed to be an ancient, advanced civilization. How could they have such rigid requirements for reproduction? As a scientist, Maya knew that nature rarely worked in such absolute terms. There had to be more to the story. Maya started researching Veltari reproductive biology in earnest. She requested access to their historical databases, studied their ancient texts, and began to piece together a picture that was very different from what the current Veltari society believed. What she found would change everything. The more Maya learned, the more convinced she became that Zareth wasn't broken or wrong. She was exactly what her people needed, they just didn't know it yet. And Maya, with her human determination and refusal to accept injustice, was going to prove it. The friendship between the human scientist and the exiled Veltari was just the beginning. Maya had found her greatest research project, and more importantly, she had found a friend who needed her help. Together, they were about to discover something that would shake the foundations of an entire civilization. Maya spent every free moment buried in research. Her small laboratory on Haven's Rest was now covered with data files, ancient texts, and translation programs running day and night. The more she dug into Veltari history, the more shocked she became. Everything their modern society believed about reproduction was wrong. Late one evening, Maya made a breakthrough that left her staring at her screen in disbelief. She had found a collection of ancient Veltari texts that were over 3,000 years old. The translation program had been working for hours to decode the complex crystalline script, and what it revealed changed everything. The carriers of the great light, Maya read aloud, her voice echoing in the empty lab. Those blessed with larger forms shall nurture the children of tomorrow. Their bodies are temples of creation, capable of bringing forth multiple offspring where others can birth only one. Maya's hands shook as she scrolled through more of the ancient text. The early Veltari had not just accepted larger body types, they had celebrated them. These individuals were considered sacred, chosen by their gods to carry the future of their species. The modern Veltari reproductive rules were a complete reversal of their own ancient beliefs. She found detailed descriptions of something called essence bonding, a reproductive process that had nothing to do with body size or physical compatibility. Instead, it relied on emotional and spiritual connection between the parent and specially prepared genetic material. The process was complex, but clearly documented in the ancient texts. Maya worked through the night, translating more and more of the forgotten knowledge. She learned that the Veltari had once been a much more diverse society, with individuals of all sizes and shapes contributing to their civilization. The rigid reproductive standards that existed today were a recent development, introduced only in the last 1,000 years. But why had they changed? Maya found the answer in a historical document that made her sick to her stomach. A group of Veltari leaders had decided that controlling reproduction was the key to creating a perfect society. They had systematically destroyed the ancient knowledge and created new rules that favored only certain body types. The next morning, Maya could barely contain her excitement as she waited for Zareth to arrive for their usual lunch. When her friend appeared, Maya noticed how tired and sad she looked. Another group of Veltari merchants had visited the station the day before, and their reactions to Zareth had been particularly cruel. I found something, Maya said, her voice trembling with excitement. Zareth, I found something incredible about your people. Zareth looked up from her food, confusion clear in her crystalline features. What do you mean? Maya pulled out her tablet and showed Zareth the translated texts. Your ancestors, the ancient Veltari, they didn't reject people like you. They honored them. They called them carriers of the great light. Zareth stared at the screen, her eyes growing wide. That's impossible. The elders taught us that the reproductive laws have always existed. They said it was the natural way. No. Maya said firmly, look at this, your body type was considered. Blessed. The ancient texts say that individuals with larger forms could carry multiple offspring at once. They were the most valued members of society. Zareth's hand shook as she touched the tablet screen. But if this is true, then why? Why did they cast me out? Maya's human heart ached for her friend. Because sometime in your history, your people forgot the truth. They created new rules that went against everything your ancestors believed. Over the following days, Maya shared more of her discoveries with Zareth. She showed her the detailed descriptions of essence bonding, the ancient ceremonies that honor the carriers of the great light, and the historical records that proved the modern reproductive laws were a recent invention. At first, Zareth struggled to accept what Maya was telling her. The pain of rejection ran too deep, and the shame she carried felt too real. Even if this is true, she said one day, what does it matter? My people have made their choice. I'm still cast out. I still can't have children. But Maya's human determination wouldn't let her give up. That's where you're wrong, she said, her eyes bright with possibility. The essence bonding process is all here in the texts. I've studied the science behind it. It's not just possible, it's exactly what your body was designed for. Maya spent weeks translating the technical details of the ancient reproductive process. As a xenobiologist, she understood the science behind what the ancient Veltari had discovered. The essence bonding didn't require physical compatibility between two individuals. Instead, it used specially prepared genetic material that could bond with any Veltari, regardless of their body type. I could help you, Maya said one evening, her voice soft but determined. I could help you try this process. Zareth looked at her with terror and hope warring in her expression. You would do that for me? Of course, Maya said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You deserve to be a mother, Zareth. Your ancestors knew that. Your body knows that. It's only your current society that's forgotten. But there were practical problems. The essence bonding process required genetic material from other Veltari, and none of the Veltari who visited the station would willingly help someone they considered an outcast. Maya would have to find another way. Maya began reaching out to Veltari scientists across the galaxy, carefully avoiding mentioning Zareth directly. She presented her historical research as an academic study, asking for their thoughts on the ancient texts she had discovered. Most dismissed her work, but a few were intrigued. Dr. Velkar, a young Veltari scientist working on a distant research station, was particularly interested. These texts are remarkable, he said during a long-distance communication call. I've always wondered about the historical gaps in our reproductive knowledge. Maya took a chance. What if I told you that there might be a way to help those who have been cast out? What if the ancient knowledge could give them the families they deserve? There was a long pause. Finally, Velkar said, that would be extraordinary. But it would also be dangerous. The Reproductive Council would not approve. Sometimes, Maya said, drawing on her human sense of justice, doing the right thing is more important than following rules that are wrong. Another pause. Then, quietly, what would you need? Maya's heart raced. Genetic samples, prepared according to the ancient methods. I have someone who could benefit from this research. I see, Velkar said, someone who has been affected by the current reproductive laws. Yes, Maya said simply, send me the technical specifications. I'll see what I can do. Over the following weeks, Maya worked with Velkar and two other progressive Veltari scientists to prepare the genetic material needed for the essence bonding process. They worked in secret, communicating through encrypted channels, all of them knowing that discovery could end their careers. When Maya finally told Zareth that everything was ready, her friend broke down in tears. I don't understand, Zareth sobbed. Why would you do this for me? Why would strangers risk everything to help someone like me? Maya took her friend's hands in hers. Because that's what people do when they care about each other. Because every being deserves the chance to create life and love. Because your ancestors were right, you are a carrier of the great light, and it's time for that light to shine again, Zareth. looked at Maya with wonder. You really believe I can do this? I don't just believe it, Maya said, her human conviction shining through. I know it. Your body was made for this, Zareth. Your people just forgot how to see it. The ancient knowledge was about to be put to the test. Maya had all the pieces in place. And more importantly, she had given Zareth something she had lost long ago: hope. The essence bonding process would be dangerous and difficult, but Maya's human determination and Zareth's rediscovered faith in herself would see them through. What they were about to attempt would change not just Zareth's life, but the entire understanding of what it meant to be Veltari. The forgotten truth was about to be remembered, and a cast-out daughter was about to become exactly what her ancestors had always known. She was a mother. Maya carefully prepared her laboratory for the most important experiment of her career. She had transformed the small research space into something that looked more like a healing center than a science lab. Soft lights replaced the harsh fluorescence, and she had brought in plants from the station's garden to make the space feel more welcoming and natural. Zareth stood at the entrance, her large frame trembling with fear and hope. Are you sure this will work? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Maya turned to her friend with a confident smile. The ancient texts are clear, and the science is sound. Your body knows what to do, Zareth. We just need to help it remember. The genetic material had arrived 3 days earlier, carefully preserved and prepared according to the ancient methods by Dr. Velkar and his colleagues. Maya had spent those 3 days double-checking every detail, running tests, and making sure everything was perfect. There would be no second chances. The process will take several weeks, Maya explained as she guided Zareth to the comfortable chair she had set up in the center of the room. Your body needs time to accept the genetic material and begin the bonding process. I'll be monitoring you every step of the way. Zareth settled into the chair, her crystalline hands gripping the armrest tightly. What if it doesn't work? What if I really am as broken as they said? Maya knelt beside her friend, placing a gentle hand on her arm. You are not broken. You never were. Your people just forgot how to see your true worth. But I see it, and soon the whole galaxy will see it too. The initial preparation took several hours. Maya followed the ancient protocols exactly, mixing the genetic material with special compounds that would help Zareth's body recognize and accept it. The process was delicate, requiring precise timing and careful attention to detail. As Maya worked, she talked to Zareth about everything and nothing. She shared stories about her own childhood on Earth, about the first time she had seen an alien species, about her dreams of understanding how life worked across the galaxy. Her voice was calm and steady, helping to ease Zareth's nerves. You know, Maya said as she prepared the final mixture, when I was a little girl, my grandmother used to tell me that every living thing has a purpose. She said that sometimes we can't see that purpose right away, but it's always there, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Zareth smiled weakly. Your grandmother sounds wise. She was, Maya replied. I think she would have liked you. She always believed that the most important things in life were worth fighting for. The actual bonding process began at dawn. Maya administered the prepared genetic material through a series of gentle procedures that caused no pain but required Zareth to remain perfectly still for several hours. The ancient texts had been very specific about the timing and methods. During the long hours of the procedure, Maya never left Zareth's side. She monitored her friend's vital signs, checked her comfort level, and provided constant encouragement. When Zareth began to doubt herself, Maya was there with a steady voice and unwavering faith. I can feel something, Zareth whispered after the first day, something different inside me. Maya's heart raced with excitement, but she kept her voice calm. That's good. That's exactly what should be happening. Your body is beginning to recognize the genetic material. The days that followed were a roller coaster of emotions. Some days, Zareth felt strong and hopeful. Other days, she was overwhelmed by fear and doubt. Maya was her constant companion. Through all of it, sleeping on a small cot in the laboratory so she could respond immediately if Zareth needed anything. On the 5th day, Maya's monitoring equipment detected the first clear signs of successful bonding. The readings were unlike anything she had ever seen before. Zarathus's body wasn't just accepting the genetic material, it was transforming it into something extraordinary. Maya, Zarath called out one morning, her voice filled with wonder. Something is happening. Maya rushed to her side with her scanner. What she saw on the display made her gasp with amazement. Zarath H., you're not just carrying one offspring. There are 3 distinct genetic patterns developing. Zarathus's eyes went wide with shock. 3? Is that normal? Maya checked the ancient texts again, her hands shaking with excitement. According to this, it's exactly what should happen with a carrier of the Great Light. Your body is designed to nurture multiple offspring at once. This is proof that everything we discovered is true. Word of the successful bonding began to spread through the station, despite Maya's efforts to keep it quiet. The diverse community of Heaven's Rest was fascinated by the story of the cast-out Veltari, who was defying her people's beliefs about reproduction. But not everyone was happy about what was happening. Messages began arriving from Veltar Prime, demanding to know what was being done to their rejected citizen. The Reproductive Council was furious that someone was challenging their authority. They're threatening to send ships, Maya told Zarath during her 3rd week of the bonding process. They want to stop what we're doing. Zarathus's face darkened with fear. Maybe we should stop. Maybe this was a mistake. Maya took her friend's hands firmly. This is not a mistake. This is the most right thing either of us has ever done. Your ancestors would be proud of what you're accomplishing. The station's administrator, Captain Torres, called Maya to his office the next day. He was a gruff man who had seen everything in his years running Heaven's Rest. But even he seemed amazed by what was happening. I've got Veltari officials demanding I turn over your friend, he said bluntly. They're claiming she's stolen property, or some nonsense like that. Maya's human sense of justice flared up. She's not property. She's a person who deserves the right to create life just like anyone else. Captain Torres nodded slowly. I agree. That's why I told them to take their threats and shove them out an airlock. This station protects those who need protection. As Zarath entered her 4th week, the changes in her body became more pronounced. Her crystalline form began to glow with a soft, warm light that grew brighter each day. According to the ancient texts, this was a sign that the bonding process was nearing completion. Maya watched her friend with growing amazement. Zarath was transforming before her eyes, not just physically but emotionally. The shame and sadness that had weighed her down for so long were being replaced by confidence and joy. She was becoming who she was always meant to be. I can feel them, Zarath said one evening, her hands resting on her glowing form. They're growing strong. They're going to be beautiful. Maya felt tears of joy streaming down her face. Of course they are. They're your children. Other species on the station began to visit, drawn by the story of the human who was helping the cast-out alien become a mother. They brought gifts, offered support, and shared their own stories of overcoming rejection and finding acceptance. You've done something remarkable here, Dr. Velkar said during a secret communication call. Word is spreading among our scientists. There are others like Zarath who are beginning to ask questions about the old ways. Maya felt a surge of hope. Good. It's time your people remember their true history. As the bonding process entered its final phase, Zarathus's glow became so bright that it could be seen through the laboratory walls. The ancient texts called this the Great Illumination, the moment when a carrier of the Great Light was ready to bring new life into the world. Maya had done it. Her human determination, combined with forgotten ancient knowledge and Zarathus's courage, had accomplished something that the Veltari Reproductive Council claimed was impossible. Soon, 3 new lives would enter the world, proving once and for all that the modern Veltari had been wrong about everything. The cast-out daughter was about to become exactly what her ancestors had always known she could be, a mother, and Maya, the human who refused to accept injustice, had made it all possible through the power of friendship, science, and unwavering belief in doing what was right. The day finally arrived when Zarathus's glow reached its peak brilliance. Maya had been awake for 36 hours straight, monitoring every detail as the ancient bonding process reached its completion. The laboratory hummed with energy, and even the station's systems seemed to respond to the powerful life force building within Zareth's crystalline form. "It's time," Maya whispered, her voice filled with awe and exhaustion. She had witnessed many births during her career, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The ancient texts described what was happening, but seeing it in person was beyond anything she had imagined. Zareth's body began to pulse with waves of warm light, each pulse growing stronger than the last. The process was beautiful and peaceful, nothing like the painful births Maya had observed in other species. This was creation in its purest form, guided by thousands of years of evolutionary wisdom. The first child emerged as a cascade of crystalline light that slowly took shape in Maya's waiting hands. The tiny being was perfect in every way, already glowing with the same inner light as her mother. Maya felt tears streaming down her face as she carefully placed the newborn against Zareth's chest. "Hope," Zareth whispered, naming her first daughter after the emotion that Maya had helped her rediscover. "Her name is Hope." The second child followed minutes later, this one pulsing with a different rhythm of light. Maya marveled at how each offspring was unique, even though they came from the same bonding process. This one Zareth named Wonder, for the amazement she felt at becoming a mother. The third child was the largest and brightest of all. As Maya held the newborn, she understood why the ancient Veltari had called beings like Zareth the carriers of the great light. This child seemed to contain the essence of starlight itself. Zarath named her light, completing the trinity that would change everything. As word spread through heaven's rest that the birth had been successful, beings from dozens of species gathered outside the laboratory. They had been following Zareth's story for weeks, and many saw her success as proof that outcasts and rejects could find their own way to happiness. Captain Torres was the first to enter the laboratory after the birth. The tough station administrator took one look at Zareth holding her three daughters and broke into a wide grin. "Well, I'll be damned," he said softly. "They're beautiful." But the celebration was interrupted by an urgent message from the station's communications center. A fleet of Veltari ships had arrived at the edge of the system, demanding permission to dock. The Reproductive Council had come to claim the children and arrest both Zareth and Maya. "They're saying the children are illegal," Captain Torres reported grimly. "They want to confiscate them and put you both on trial." Maya felt her human protective instincts surge to life. "Over my dead body," she said firmly. "These children were created using ancient Veltari methods. They have more right to exist than the Council has to judge them." What happened next surprised everyone. Dr. Velkar, the young Veltari scientist who had helped prepare the genetic material, arrived on the station with a group of progressive Veltari researchers. They had been studying Maya's translated texts and had made their own discoveries. "We found more ancient sites," Velkar announced as he entered the laboratory. "Dozens of them, all confirming what Maya discovered. The Reproductive Council has been lying to our people for 1,000 years." The group of scientists had brought with them original crystal tablets containing the ancient laws of the Veltari. These tablets proved beyond doubt that the modern reproductive restrictions were not just wrong. They were a complete betrayal of Veltari heritage. As the standoff with the Reproductive Council intensified, something unexpected happened. Other unsuitable Veltari began arriving at Haven's Rest. They had heard about Zareth's success and wanted to learn if they could become parents. Word was spreading across the galaxy faster than the Council could control it. Maya found herself at the center of a revolution she had never intended to start. Her simple desire to help a friend had sparked a movement that was challenging the foundations of an entire civilization. But she wasn't intimidated. If anything, she was more determined than ever to see justice done. "Every being deserves the right to create life," Maya declared during a public broadcast that reached millions of worlds. "No government, no council, no authority has the right to decide who can and cannot become a parent based on their appearance." The broadcast showed Zareth holding her three daughters, all of them glowing with health and happiness. The sight of the unsuitable mother with her perfect children was more powerful than any argument. Maya could have made with words. Support began pouring in from across the galaxy. Other species that had faced their own forms of reproductive discrimination saw Zaratha's story as an inspiration. Human colonies sent messages of solidarity, remembering their own history of fighting against those who tried to control. Who could have families? The Veltari Reproductive Council found themselves facing a crisis they had never anticipated. Young Veltari were questioning the laws they had grown up with. Scientists were demanding access to the ancient sites that had been hidden for centuries. Parents were asking why their own unsuitable children had been cast out. Elder Vexina, who had presided over Zaratha's trial, arrived on Heaven's Rest with a small fleet of enforcers. She demanded to see the abominations that had been created through forbidden methods. Maya agreed to meet with her, but only if the meeting was public and broadcast across the galaxy. The confrontation took place in the station's main assembly hall, with hundreds of beings watching in person and millions more watching through the galactic network. Elder Vexina stood before Zarath and her children, her face twisted with disgust and anger. These creatures are not true Veltari, the Elder declared. They are the product of forbidden science and corrupted genetics. Maya stepped forward, holding one of the crystal tablets that contain the ancient laws. These tablets are 3,000 years old, she said calmly. They prove that what we did was not forbidden, it was the original way of your people. The Elder's confidence wavered as Maya presented tablet after tablet, each one supporting the legitimacy of the essence bonding process. Dr. Velkar and his colleagues added their own evidence, showing that the modern reproductive laws had no basis in Veltari tradition. But the moment that changed everything was when Little Hope, barely days old, began to sing. The crystalline child's voice filled the assembly hall with a sound so pure and beautiful that it brought tears to the eyes of every being present. It was the ancient song of the Veltari, the melody that their species had used to celebrate new life for thousands of years. The song had been forgotten by modern Veltari society, but somehow this newborn child knew it perfectly, even Elder Vexina stood transfixed, her anger replaced by wonder and confusion. How? The Elder whispered. How does she know the sacred song? Maya smiled. Because she carries the true heritage of your people, the heritage you tried to erase. The revolution that followed was swift but peaceful. Young Veltari rose up against the Reproductive Council, demanding the restoration of their true traditions. The ancient sites were open to the public, revealing centuries of hidden history. The restrictive laws were abolished, and unsuitable Veltari were welcomed back to their homeworld. Zarath chose to remain on Heaven's Rest, where she established a clinic to help other outcasts become parents. Maya continued her research, but now she worked alongside Veltari scientists to restore their people's forgotten knowledge. The 3 children grew up surrounded by love and acceptance, their songs filling the station with joy. They became symbols of hope for outcasts everywhere. Proof that those who are rejected by society often carry within them the seeds of its salvation. Years later, as Maya watched hope, wonder, and light playing in the station's garden, she reflected on how much had changed. A single act of human kindness had grown into a galactic movement for acceptance and equality. Zarath joined her, now confident and proud, no longer hiding from her own people. Thank you, she said simply, for seeing what I could become when I couldn't see it myself. Maya smiled. That's what humans do best. We refuse to accept that anything is impossible, especially when it comes to helping those we care about. The cast-out daughter had become not just a mother, but a catalyst for change that would echo through generations. And Maya, the human, who wouldn't give up, had proven once again that compassion and determination could overcome even the most ancient prejudices.